Hey guys, it's Chris with Double Eagle Gunworks, and today we're going to be talking about the force safety rules for any gun use, and I'm going to be expounding a little bit more about why each one of those is important. And so the first rule for any when you're seeing any kind of handgun, shotgun, rifle, whatever, the first rule for firearms is always assume that the firearm is loaded until you verify that it's not. So I've got this gun laying here on the desk in front of me, and it's got the magazine in it, and the slide is closed. So unless I really closely inspect it and see that the loaded indicator is not showing here on the side of the slide, because the extractor on this one, if there's a round in the chamber, usually would have the extractor is out, and it's got a little mark on it that you can see when the gun is loaded. But if you didn't know that and you saw the magazine in this gun, you don't know whether it's loaded or unloaded. So you always assume that a gun is loaded until you verify for yourself that it's not. And lots of reasons for that, but the majority of gun accidents happen with unloaded guns, at least guns that people thought were unloaded. So you always need to verify that the gun is actually unloaded before you start messing with it, unless you're about to go out and shoot and you're going to have the gun loaded. But so with this semi-auto, to make sure that it's unloaded, we're going to drop the magazine, nothing in the magazine. But let's lock the slide back, and you inspect the chamber, look down the magazine well. So now we know that this gun is unloaded. So until that point, you always assume that that gun is loaded. It will reduce the number of accidents that people have with guns. Just use the common sense and always assume that a gun is loaded until you verify for yourself that it's not. It's going to make everybody a lot safer. So the second rule for gun use is that you never point a gun at anything that you're not willing to destroy, because if the gun is loaded and you're pointing it at something that is something that's precious to you, whether it is a really nice piece of art, or your child, or you're sweeping the room with the gun, you're not paying attention to where you're pointing the gun, then if your finger were to get on the trigger and you pull the trigger, then you always want to make sure that gun is always pointed in a safe direction while you're handling it. So I've got the gun now pointed toward the back wall here, and I know there's nothing back there that it's going to hurt, but I also know the gun is unloaded. But if you keep the gun pointed in a safe direction, then if there is an actual accidental discharge, then there's nothing that's going to be hurt by that accidental discharge. Now, the third rule of gun use is always keep your finger out of the trigger guard until you're on target and you're ready to shoot. So until you've got this gun pointed at the target and you're ready to pull the trigger, that finger needs to be outside that trigger guard, along the rail of the gun, whether it is a semi-auto or if it's a revolver. You just have it running along the frame of the gun underneath the cylinder. If it's a rifle or an AR or shotgun, whatever else, keep your finger outside of that trigger guard until you're ready to shoot. Because if you're walking around and you've got your finger in the trigger, and what I always tell my CWP classes is if you're walking around and you've got your finger in the trigger and somebody comes up behind you and startles you, then your first reaction when somebody startles you usually is to jerk. And if you jerk and you accidentally pull the trigger on whatever firearm that is that you've got in your hands, then you've just had an accidental discharge. And if you hadn't been paying attention, again, to rule number 2, always keep the gun pointed in the same safe direction, then you've just shot something that you might not be able to fix. So always keep your finger out of the trigger guard and outside, just along the frame of the gun until you're ready to shoot, so that you don't have any accidental discharges. And the last rule of firearm use, at least the 4 major rules, is always know your target and what is beyond it. And that goes for whether you're just at a shooting range shooting, or if you're in a defensive situation and you're trying to figure out, is it safe to shoot the direction that I'm aiming at. So if you're in a just a range situation and it's an outdoor range and there's not a berm or some kind of structure beyond your targets to be able to stop the bullets, then you need to figure out what is beyond that that range and which direction your bullet's going to be going, because whenever you pull the trigger, you're responsible for that bullet. Wherever it winds up, it's your responsibility. You pull the trigger, so it's your responsibility. So if it hit something inadvertently that you didn't know was there, it's still your responsibility. So you need to figure out where the range is pointing and make sure that it's safe to shoot, whether you're at an outdoor range. Now, if it's a defensive situation and you're trying to stop a bad guy from whatever he's doing, then look beyond the perpetrator and see if there is somebody or something behind your target, that if that bullet goes through the person, then what is it going to hit as it exits him? Is there another person standing right behind him that is going to be hit by a stray round if the bullet goes through the target, or if you miss the target? So you got to make sure that you are angled to be able to get a clear shot and not have anything beyond the target that is going to be hurt when you're shooting. So that's your 4 rules for handgun use. Rule number 1, always assume that a handgun is loaded until you verify that it's not. Number 2, always keep the gun pointed in a safe direction. Number 3, keep your finger out of the trigger until you're ready to shoot. And number 4, always know your target and what is beyond it. So you always stay safe when you're handling the gun. Check out doubleeaglegunworks.com for more information, and like and subscribe down at the bottom. Check you later.